Hello, everyone. This is the distribution demo for Thursday, March 31st, 2022. We have a special guest this week, Grant Young with the quality team will be showing us an overview of the Get tooling. Take it away, Grant.
Okay, thanks, Stephen. Yeah, this is going to be an interesting one because I'm very much preaching to the choir here with the distribution team who are very much in the space and very much aware of all the things that Get will be dabbling with. But I have put some slides in the document, and I'll just call out a few highlights in those slides that are relevant here, and I'll call over to running builds with Get. Will look not that exciting, obviously, but it'll just be Terraform and Ansible output. But at that point, we can maybe do a bit of Q&A. So let me get those slides up. So I won't bore you by reading this out, of course, but that slide just calls out what Get is doing. Does quite a few bits, and the key thing to call for this group though is more the next slide, and that Get is designed to be as boring as possible. It's designed to be just a straightforward, simple kind of layer between Omnibus with Omnibus and/or the Helm charts, and just put them in the right configuration, the right order on a cloud provider that makes GitLab run at scale. It's not a replacement for Omnibus. It's not a replacement for Helm. We try and be very strict about it. If someone suggests, "Oh, we should do this," it's like, actually, that's more relevant, that's more appropriate to do on Omnibus or Helm charts. We try and just we take kind of direction from the two distributions that you do, which are just so. Get would exist if Omnibus or Helm. Those things just are the cores of GitLab across the board. So Get's just coming in just to try and be that middle layer. I want to call out this diagram here, which kind of calls out where Get kind of fits in, I guess, in the kind of grand scheme of things. So yeah, it takes Omnibus and Helm, puts them in the right order on the cloud providers. Obviously, though, to get them on the cloud providers, Get needs to do various stuff with the target cloud provider to get the right infrastructure up, so VMs or Kubernetes clusters or networking, disks, object storage, all that stuff. Networking, that's actually quite difficult, that one. That's where we try and keep it as simple as possible, but networking, it's not simple itself, so it can get quite involved there. So it touches on a lot of points, and to write Get, you need to have kind of knowledge on GitLab, Omnibus Helm, Terraform, Ansible, AWS, GCP, Azure, Kubernetes. It touches on a lot of things. It's quite a vibrant kind of area, so it's quite fascinating to work with. But yeah, it's an interesting one. And the last one, it's just a slide about why we made it and why quality are kind of dealing with it. Quality engineering. In quality, you'll hear the phrase a lot. What doesn't happen in my environment? I think I heard that my first day, I think, something close to that. Classic issue back in the day, everyone had their own builds on their own machines, and then one person finds a bug and someone else like, "Oh, no, it doesn't happen in mine." Turns out it's a misconfiguration of one person's machine, or it's not, it's actually a real issue, but etc., etc. And so quality, is changed. That space has changed so great, and that's why it's now kind of called quality engineering. One bit that I think is continuing to grow and will continue to grow is that using these kind of configuration and provisioning tools to build out environments in exactly the same way across different people's machines or on a central place, so everyone can come together and go, "Look, this is a real bug. Here it is," and also enables like other things such as more holistic testing, performance testing, stuff like that. So in the quality space, we always need a tool like this. So we built it ourselves essentially a few years ago, and then there was an effort in the company to try and consolidate, and we decided to go for this tool, which was effectively called the Performance Environment Builder, which isn't as catchy, and we renamed it to Get at that point. So yeah, I think that's all the stuff I wanted to ramble off here. We should have a build going already, or close enough. This build is in our CI, and it's building out a 10K reference architecture, which is cloud native hybrid. So it's deploying several services on Helm, such as Web Service, Sidekick, Nginx, Prometheus. It's then building out. It's going to build out various backends, Gitlab, but it's only Git layers in this one. And then what it also does is sets up some of the AWS services. So RDS is going to be used for the database, Elasticache is used for Redis, and then Git will come in and tie it all together and make the environment sing, essentially. That's the goal. That's probably the starting of the RDS instance takes an age, unfortunately. But, this should start to fill in very soon. Oh, there we go, it's just starting now. So that's enough of my rambling. I want to keep it short because distribution already probably knows a lot about Git, but I'm happy to answer any questions or discuss any other points specifically. So feel free to fire away.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I dropped a quick link. We have a project called Reference Architecture Tester, or RAT, that Baloo put together.
Yep.
And I was curious if maybe we could just real quickly kind of give some context on, the integration between those tools.
Yeah, RAT is a wrapper around Git. It's been a little while since we worked on that together. I was mostly with Nalia as well, one of my colleagues. So, but yeah, they worked on that together, and they did a wrapper around Git just to make it work for the omnibus pipelines. I don't think the wrapper is doing anything heavy or changing anything heavily in Git. It's just wrapping some stuff around it to make it easier to work in the pipeline. But I think it's just mostly Git, just with a few extra bells and whistles to get the config in and everything else. But I can
gotcha. So
check that after the call. But yeah.
Yeah, my understanding is that Git as it is today is essentially, it has to be attended, or is meant to be running in like an attended mode, and then the stuff that RAT does was specifically so you could do it completely unattended from start to finish. Is that still the case, or has Git moved forward to where it's? I guess what I'm getting at is, like, do we still need to continue to work on this tool, or at some point will it become obsolete?
So Git has always been designed to be unattended. The pieces that aren't so attended, it's just the config really. The config you need to generate. You need to have in the right.
Gotcha, generating the config essentially.
Yeah, the config. Yeah, we write it once in quality for our pipelines, and we have them in a different project, and our CI just pulls them in essentially. So there's different ways to skin that essentially to tackle that piece. But yeah, I need to refresh myself with RAT. I'll get back to you on that and see what it's doing specifically. My understanding was yeah, I failed to recall what RAT is doing on top of Git, but my understanding is still quite light. But yes, Git works fully intended. The screen you're seeing it now is literally it working in a
gotcha.
intended fashion.
Yeah, to your point, back to one of your slides, right? The idea of like not wanting to have duplicate tooling where we don't actually need it.
Yeah,
I mean, there's a few. We definitely needed it, but I'm not sure we'll continue to.
There's a few other pieces that Git is designed to be ran by people, like by users. So there's a few pieces for a full automated pipeline. If I'm right, if the pipeline is building an environment from scratch each time, so there will be a few commands you need to run, but again, that should be scriptable in CI. So like you need to just generate the bucket for a Terraform state. Or if it's just a temporary job, you don't need to do that. You just need to put your Terraform state somewhere where Terraform supports. And you need to have your config. Yeah.
This is actually how some of Horse is working with 10 control. And some of the other bits that they're doing is they've wrapped Git and some additional component additions into a set of tooling that allows them to automate that in an infrastructure as code behavior to boot. So it's kind of we're stacking one more Lego on top to boot. It makes it very, very controllable for what we're doing in that project.
And that's right and proper, because Git is a base tool. It's designed to give you an environment, but like I say, there's those pieces that are more awkward, like doing Terraform state. You need to have access to a bucket. That therefore means you need to have a GCP or an AWS account to actually be able to create that bucket. And that's obviously a little bit of a sensitive layer that on the Horse, that makes sense because they're going to have their own users and their own stuff. So their wrapper is just mainly to automate that little piece, and as well as their stuff that are very specific to Horse and wouldn't be appropriate in Git. It's kind of a waterfall effect, really. So Git uses Omnibus, and Horse uses Git, which then therefore uses Omnibus and Helm. This is kind of that waterfall effect as they get to a more specific project.
Yep. which is exactly how all of this has been designed to work together. So
yeah, from the beginning. Yeah. Yeah, I'm just really open right now, just to remind myself what I was doing. It's a very light wrapper. Yeah, it's only got one shell script in it, which I think is just doing what we discussed. So it's getting the config in, getting the right pieces, an SSH key, for example, to put onto the VMs, so you can say SSH and that kind of stuff. It's a very light touch. So I wouldn't say there's any need to worry about that. It's not like if it was like a complete fork again and they're doing stuff a lot differently, that's when that kind of thinking would come in. But because it's just a very light wrapper, that's okay. Oh, that's finished. That's a very quick one because Terraform's already up, but cracking on. Anybody want any other questions or any other bits of the setup that I can discuss or go into?
Good question. Are you gonna walk us through like start to finish what interaction with get is like, or is it gonna be just like I'm not entirely sure what the scope of this is.
Well, I could talk about this the start piece. What do you mean by start? Like how you like literally how you would get started with get, or yeah, sure. So let's see, what have I got to hand? That'll make life easier there. I'm actually writing up a quick start guide right now, which could be useful to show. So as I said at the top, the get is just basically just Terraform and Ansible scripts. We're not doing anything special. We're not trying to change those tools because they're well known and well used in the industry. So that means you have much more familiarity with potential users. So we're not trying to change anything there. So the start piece really is let's see if I find that guide, visual aid. So also not going to read this out, but the contents there kind of give you the kind of the baseline there. So basically you set up Terraform first, usually because that's you need to provision machines. You set up a few config files that work with our Terraform modules. You'd set up just authentication to, you'd create a bucket for your state. You'd set up a config file to point Terraform to use that state. You'd then initialize Terraform. You'd have a config file which just sets up the module for get. So that's in that. I'll show you an example for that. So that looks like this. And it's just it's meant to be a very simple file, which just gives it all the information it needs. It just needs to know what should I call the machines, or what prefix should I give to the machines in any other infrastructure, what SSH key should I use, and what machines am I actually building out. So in this case, it's a simple omnibus environment. It's going off and building various VMs for the different GitLab components. And that's essentially the main thing of the file. There's one extra parameter here about how to set the IP for the HE proxy instance in this setup. There is other examples we could show for like Cloud Native, which would just be slightly different, where you'd actually go in and say, I want you to set up a Kubernetes cluster of these node pools and everything else. And then you just run Terraform and it just goes off and configures everything for you. And then the second half is just doing essentially the same for Ansible. You set up your config files for Ansible, which so you have a dynamic inventory, which looks like this. This is for AWS. And that's just to tell Ansible, say here, this is where you go in AWS, here's the VMs you should be looking for, or the other infrastructure, not just the VMs. And here's how you would find them. And then that gives Ansible all these nobles. Okay, here's my VMs, I'm going to go off. And then you just have a standard kind of configuration file, just with some bits that you can put in just to give GitLab, Ansible, the right data to set up GitLab. So mostly passwords, providers that using the other bits. And then you just run the Ansible like normal, just running the main playbook there. Does that answer your question, or were you looking for something a little bit different?
It kind of does. I think the format of this meeting is not exactly conducive to going in depth. So yeah, it's a good start.
Yeah, it's not, and that's always the challenge. I try to avoid deep diving because then everyone else is just kind of glazing over. But if you wanted a more direct demo, I'm happy to do that one to one.
Yeah, it feels like maybe it's as a separate, I hate to even call it a demo, but kind of a a walkthrough of actually deploying an environment. The quick start guide, that seems like awesome.
Yeah, we get asked that a lot, so that's why we're doing it. Yeah. So this is actually just in final review. This should be going in very soon, as well as some other config examples as well, which where are those? So I can show you quickly. So this will be going in soon as well. Just a bunch of config examples. We'll just start with 10K just to start with. Probably we'll be expanding it as we go along. So AWS services is like our more complicated thing. So we literally have all the config files you need that you just place and get in Git or in the appropriate folders. So Terraform, yeah, if you go to environment, you'd see a slightly different file compared to the last one. So you still see some familiar stuff. So you've got console and GitLab game being deployed in here. You've got these settings which call out the node pool sizing for Kubernetes, and then at the end actually is where you see the where we set up RDS and Elasticache for Redis and Postgres respectively. So that's these examples we're going in soon as well. Again, to try the current release of Git that we're working on is just trying to make that onboarding easier so people can get a better grasp of where do I actually start, how do I actually get going. And then once you're actually over that hub, it's actually very easy. After that, you just run Terraform, apply Ansible, playbook run, and you just let it run essentially unless you need to make any changes.
Could you please clarify, like, are you gearing it specifically for being ran from the desktop or more from the pipelines? And what would be the differences in running into environments?
So, well, I'll answer the first piece there. So Ansible and Terraform, let's say, just standard tools. We don't prescribe really where you run it from. It can be run from anywhere. You can run it in pipelines. Obviously, you just need to have everything ready to go. So you need a state bucket and Terraform state ready and your config ready. But outside of that, we run it daily in our pipelines. But you can also run it from you can run literally against the same environment from your desktop as long as you've got exactly the same files. Ansible, there's no issue there. Terraform, it needs a shared state, so you need to make sure you've got access to the exact same state as everyone else. But that's why we're talking about setting up a bucket in AWS where all users, if you're working in a team, for example, would point to the exact same state. So if they try and run Terraform, it won't clash or do anything else along those lines.
I was more in terms of because in the CI environment, there are multiple things that you can do to make your life easier, and like any reference implementation for the CI, that would, like, you are saying that you're producing the quick start guide for, I'm assuming, running it from the desktop, but
it is, yes.
In CI, for example, GitLab CI, okay, so what would your typical setup gonna look like? So which the variables you would set for the project, or how would you partition the project in CI so you can have multiple environments and things like that? And how would you use for example, Terraform, we can use the Terraform state files and pipe them into the GitLab as well. We can save that not in just a bucket, but in GitLab itself. So any of those points, that's where I was kind of heading with that question. Do you have any documentation or any pointers on how would one go about setting that up?
It's an interesting question. We don't have any documentation per se specifically on that scenario because it's quite a specific scenario. Most customers would only have one environment. Right, so they just put the config files in one place and they probably just do a checkout get and then have that merge and do that. For quality, we have many environments, and that's what's on the list right now, on the screen right now. And what we do is that we just set up a simple shell script just to say, here's the environment name, copy over the config files into the get folder in CI, and then run get. That's it. We try and make it as simple as possible, and we don't prescribe because everyone's situation is a little bit different. Depends on how they want to handle secrets and passwords, but it could be scope for a guide, I guess, for CI if you think that'd be useful.
Our case, just to explain a little bit more of our case, like for example, we run 3 different instances of OpenShift.
Sure.
And, you know, so having multiple environments is not uncommon for us to run at the same time. So having them controlled, and in our case right now, we moved in the direction of utilizing as much of GitLab's tools as possible. So for example, all the environments are registered as environments in GitLab. So you get to see which ones are running. And if one needs to be decommissioned, you just stop it and, well, it's being decommissioned. So that's the level of integration I was looking for. And like whether you guys ever kind of moved that far in implementing your stuff, so we can at least glance into what kind of challenges you faced and how did you guys implement this. I understand that you don't want to be prescriptive, but at the same time, having some reference implementation to kind of go off of would be useful.
Sure. I mean, well, so this project right now is how we do it. As I say, we just went very simple and used the shell scripts to make that work, and just various pipelines with then depending control of environment variables, but which environment they run. We run several, certainly over 5 environments every week with our tool. Yeah, we've not actually explored the environment piece of GitLab. That was when we last checked. That was more targeted towards review apps and stuff like that. But it's something we look at again if there's anything we can do to kind of hook that up. But we just use CI essentially to run our environments, like I say, with a simple shell script just to populate the right files in the right places. But yeah, I mean, I'm happy to discuss that one more. It sounds interesting.
Cool. All right. I'll get off my soapbox.
I see that as
Very welcome.
interesting. Cool. I think we're getting close to time. I wanted to just kind of pause a second, see if there's any other input. All right, that sound can only mean one thing. Grant, wanted to give you a shout out. Thank you for taking the time to present this. I know it's you're in a completely different time zone than many of the team members here in the States, so very much appreciated.
No problem at all. Like I say, we've got the project, we've got the channel. Any questions, any more deep dive stuff, feel free to reach out. We can do that async or any other way. Happy to discuss it more.
Sounds good. I got a feeling Dimitro might be checking in with you here.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's some interesting ideas, yeah.
I can see it in his eyes.
Yeah, thanks, Grant.
No
All right,
problem at
cool.
all.
I'm going to stop the recording because I want to ask a question.